destroying the mind. No, you're just reducing it. You're reducing it to a level such that it's no longer harmful. By reducing the misperception, that is the exaggerated view of reality, which is the misapprehension. Our misapprehension, there's two ways in which we can misapprehend things. We can deny the existence of something that does exist. Or we can wrongly perceive something that actually does not exist. So in the case of our root misapprehension, which is the root of all our problems, it's the second type. It's not that we deny the existence of something that does exist, because the self exists, right? We naturally don't think there's no I. So there is a self. But right now, the self that we perceive of and the self that exists, we're not able to differentiate between the two. So when we deny a certain self, it seems you're denying everything, because that seems to be the same thing for you, right? Sometimes I give the example, I don't know, I can't come up with a better example, but I use it again and again. For instance, if you live near a place that is very smelly, emanating, like producing a lot of horrible smells, if you live near this place long enough, you will no longer notice. So you won't notice because that's all you know. You're not aware that there's a less extreme smell, because what you're familiar with is that extreme smell. You got used to it. And if someone comes along and tells you that it's possible that there's a place that doesn't have that smell, for you that may initially seem, well, that's a smellless place. If not that smell, well, which smell would there be left? And you fall into the extreme of nihilism, like you fall into the extreme of thinking, oh, there can't be a self. Because the one that I perceive, if that doesn't exist, what can exist? Because we've exaggerated, as with the smell, it's exaggerated. But since for us what the self is that exaggerated version, no self means, the absence of that self means no self. So we go into the other extreme. So therefore, it's always stressed, of course the I exists, the self exists, you exist, I exist. It'd be ridiculous. Who's talking? Who's talking if not me? Who's listening if not you? Okay? And if you get a sense, oh, there's no I because it's been a night, just do this. Just pinch yourself. There you are. So the self does exist. However, because we have no sense of another version than the exaggerated one, it's either that or nothing. So it's a natural sense that we go, well, it can't exist. All right. So that's important to recognize. And actually, recognizing how the self really exists is the solution to all our problems. So then you may wonder, what? There's only one real solution? Buddhism is full of different mental exercises. Being more patient, being more loving, being more kind, being more generous, practicing this, practicing that. Why not just focusing in on how does the self exist? Really, that's a really important question. Well, the point, why is it most important, and the Dalai Lama explains it in here, to actually focus in on how the I exists? Well, because it is the solution to all problems. It is the solution to anger. We'll see how this is the case. It's the solution to jealousy, to all the different emotional states that actually harm us. And the kind of antidotes that you practice besides understanding the self, such as patience, practice in generosity, in rejoicing, as an antidote to jealousy, etc. So all those are just temporary. They're limited. They're temporary in the sense that they will not totally, through the practice of patience, you cannot totally remove anger. Through causes and conditions, it can always come back. So it's just a temporary solution. Plus, the antidote to anger is not the antidote to a craving. The antidote to craving is not the antidote, this temporary one. The temporary antidote to craving is not an antidote to jealousy, etc. So they reduce one specific, the other antidotes that, like the ones I just mentioned, patience, generosity and so forth, they only temporarily reduce that which they oppose, and they are not an antidote to all the other ones. Are they valuable? Absolutely. Because unless and until we remove the misperception of reality, we still need to apply them. We still need them. They kind of create the way. They move us in the right direction. They make our mind more pliant. They make the mind more focused. If our anger and our craving are too strong, no way can we really understand how the self exists. It's really difficult to get through, to get the right kind of insight, because the other states of mind serve as obstacles. But in the end, we need to tackle our misperception of reality. And so this is why in this particular course, and also as the whole book, basically deals with that. But that's of course just one aspect of Buddhist psychology. All right, having said that, now, what is that type of mind? What is that type of misperception? And that's the hardest. That's the hardest to understand. Now, misperception, one basic thing you need to know about what a mind is. It's difficult to understand the mind, but I believe if you understand that aspect of the mind, it helps you. So your mind, your misperception, love, compassion, whatever mind it is, it has something in common. Every mind has something in common with all other minds, which means it experiences something. It experiences something, right? It perceives something, it experiences something. So that's what every mind does. It experiences something. So it's an experiencer in that way. But it's also, you can describe it as an agent. An agent in the sense that it does something and it always has an object. It always has an object. There's always a content. So even if you just think of nothingness, that's an object, it's nothingness, right? So if you say, just think of nothing, well then the nothingness is your object. Or you think of yesterday, you think of tomorrow, you perceive the things around you with the sense consciousnesses anyway. It's very obvious, it's shape and color, sounds, etc. But even with your mental consciousness, there's always something. And when you meditate, you'll find out. When you try to just have one object, keeping the mind focused one-pointedly, just one object, right? Just the breath. And then this object and that object, thinking about yesterday, thinking about today, planning the future, reminiscing about the past, I don't know, thinking of what I just perceived right now, etc. So the mind is never still, there's always an object there. Alright, so that's the mind. A non-physical experiencer, dependent on the brain, yes, especially when we're awake, but not the brain. It's an experiencer that always has an object, and the very least it does is it experiences that object. It perceives it. It is aware of it. And then it can do more with it. It can judge it, it can classify it, it can doubt it, it can worry about it, it can be angry with it, it can be loving. That's what the mind can do with its object, different things. Alright, so every mind has that basic function. Now, with regard to the misperception of reality, this root misperception that I said is the root of everything, what the Dalai Lama says is the root of everything, that mind does exactly that. It perceives something. It doesn't even do anything more than just perceiving it. Actually, it doesn't classify, it doesn't analyze. On its basic level, it just perceives something. But the object it perceives doesn't exist. The object it perceives doesn't exist. It perceives of the I as existing independently. Existing in and of. There are different words of describing it. This is where it becomes difficult. The easiest word is independently. Okay? Now you may go, I don't have that misperception because I think the I is dependent. But that's a little tricky because that's a different type of mind. If I ask you, do you think you depend on other things? You say, yes. That is an intellectual mind that arises in response to that question. But that is not the misapprehension of reality. That doesn't arise in that moment because you try to answer the question. Your intellectual mind arises. The misapprehension of reality is not a coarse intellectual mind. It's much deeper. It comes from deep within, right? When you say, yeah, I think the I exists independently, and I say, you're so stupid, then you probably have a mind like, oh, me? Then you're lucky. So first it was the intellectual mind that intellectually thinks, oh yeah, I exist interdependently. But then when I do something to bother that self-grasping mind, right, which feels like I'm a little bit more precious, when I go against it saying, oh, you are more stupid than everyone else. If I were to say that, right? Right? I mean, it sounds horrible. But it's a good opportunity, right? If you say that to me, oh, you're so stupid. You're the most stupid person in this room, or whatever. And I go, me? Right? The mind arises. Previously it was not there. I was very happy. I answered your question correctly, you know, like you asked me, do you think the I depends on other things? I said, yes, it depends on other people. That's my intellectual mind. That arises and that enables me to answer. That motivates me to answer. But then, you are saying something that goes against, and of course, first my ear consciousness hears it, and it's pretty neutral for a few milliseconds, and then I go, at first I'm still smiling. And slowly the smile vanishes. Right? Because in my mind is going, tuk, 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 tuk. Right? He said, I'm stupid, I'm more in front of everyone. How embarrassing. Why would he say that? That is just not justified. So reasoning rises, right? That's not okay. Okay, and I know so much, and he just doesn't sense of an I. But that's much harder to recognize. It comes from deep within. So like I, okay? This would be a great time to meditate. In fact, I should insult everyone and then tell you to meditate. Right? Those are the times, like, there's a really strong sense of I, and that's very hard to catch, really hard to catch. And like I said, it's not that intellectual coarse one. And the one that I, that sense that perceives the I, it comes from so deep within, and usually there's like a whole balagan of stuff that's happened, so it's very hard to catch it. We're very busy with other things. I'm busy at setting it right that I'm not stupid, etc. So in that moment, I just don't have the space. I can't sit down to meditate. I'm emotionally all over the place. That's our problem. And that self-centered mind, if it's not active, right, in those moments, which I really don't have the time then to meditate, it lies dormant and it still affects everything. What's the word for dormant in Hebrew? Latent. Chadum. Chadum. It lies radum. It lies radum. Okay, it's not actively there, it lies latent. But even if it's latent, it can still affect, it can still strongly affect our behavior. So this is our main difficulty, to make it arise, but then arise such that we're not overwhelmed and we can use it. So memory helps us, or imagination. Oh, if I were now to be embarrassed in front of everyone, what would it feel like? So this is again where your experience needs to come in. An intellectual understanding will not be enough. And we'll meditate about this in a moment. But let me just say, so this will be our first meditation, recognizing that I. Okay, and we'll do it, what I talked about before, we'll do that also later, but I want to do it in the context of the I. So, what does it do, that mind exaggerates the sense of the self. It's quite strong, I. And it's almost as if it could be located somewhere, right? Like maybe in the chest, or maybe in your head, it just depends. It's usually not in your knee. And I've never had a sense of my eye being in my elbow. So it's usually somewhere in this area. And there's a sense that this eye is independent, exists independently. It's kind of like an independent, exists in and of itself. Don't bring in the intellectual that thinks, oh no, but it depends on food, blah, blah. That's not the self-cherishing mind. That self-cherishing mind is a sense, it just is, and doesn't need anything to be there. Okay? That's the, and then that gives rise to And it's more important. And it's more precious. It gives rise to another kind of mind. Okay? All right. So, let's do the meditation. First, we'll spend a few moments just watching the breathing. You may count your breath if you find that helpful, or just think breathing in, breathing out. This is also described in the book as a method to doing breathing meditation. Just to clear the mind of any disruptive thoughts. I'm going to do that for about 2-3 minutes. So now try to bring to mind a time when there was a strong sense of I. Maybe at a time when you were criticized, embarrassed, or wrongly accused of something. And without getting involved into the emotion at the time, try to be objective about how the I appeared to your mind in that situation. Is there a sense you can locate that I somewhere in the body? Do you get a sense that it's something separate from mind and body? Does it appear to be that which controls your mind? Or that which controls your body? How concrete does it feel? When someone accuses you of having stolen something, although you haven't done so. So it is that sense of a very solid, separate entity, which we call I. Which then gives rise to what's called the self-centered attitude. Or self-cherishing. Mind that considers this I to be more precious than others. And its happiness to be more important than the happiness of others. Try to recognize that self-centered attitude in yourself. Try to get a sense then how that awareness may give rise to anxiety. And worry. Worry about not getting what I want. Feeling anxious about losing my reputation, my wealth, and so forth. Can you get a sense of how strong sense of I gives rise to loneliness?